So this is number 2. We're going over anger. Of the 4 major pitfalls for addiction: hunger, anger, loneliness, tired. Today, right now, we're going to go over anger. How do we deal with anger? Because when we get angry, we kind of lose focus of the most important things, and sometimes we will say and do things that we regret. We can say and hurt people. We might get aggressive and physically aggressive. We might storm off, break things, but we also might act out in our addictions and act out in a way, or prepare ourselves to act out in rebelliousness, just because we're so angry and frustrated with whatever is kind of coming up. So understanding that this part of anger, and if we feel angry, learning how to manage that in a way that is healthier. And I think, first off, to understand what is anger. Well, anger is an emotion. It's something we feel. There's a chemical change in our brains and in our bodies that when we feel that anger, it activates our system to defend, to attack, to kind of take down a problem. Now, for me, what I see here, and this is part of the mental shift that needs to happen, is anger has a function. That there is a purpose behind why we feel angry, that our bodies are intentionally triggering this, or something in our environment is triggering anger to help us. So the function of anger, and a lot of times what I see with anger is the function is when there is an injustice, when we feel attacked and need to be on the defensive, when we feel that there's something going wrong, something is wrong, right? And so again, this idea of injustice, we get our hackles raised, we get prepared to right a wrong, or if we do feel unduly attacked, or even just attacked, we can feel that anger when we feel wronged, or offended that someone is unrighteously or inappropriately doing something to us or to others, not just to ourselves. It's not always egotistical, but to others as well in our environment, that kind of makes us rise up to fix the problem or to deal with the issue. And so I think, if you are understanding that this idea of anger as has a function and there's a purpose behind it, learning how to focus that and use it appropriately. Because if we get to the point where we are flooded, right, heart rate goes up to a certain degree and we start to see red, or even before we see red, before we black out in anger, like our body is shifting its chemical balances, and with that shift in blood flow, there's part of this back brain that will take over, right? This part of this more animalistic, more instinctual part of our brain that isn't so logical, rational at times, but this one starts to take over. It actually shuts off blood flow to the frontal lobe, that's where rational critical thinking is, and sends the blood to other parts of our organs and our bodies, our arms, our legs, to prepare us for a fight, to prepare us to run for our lives, or to kind of just get us into a place where we can take a hit and be okay. And so our body is preparing us to deal with an issue. And if we get to that point where we are flooded, right, where this frontal lobe just kind of shuts off, and our conscious thinking of values and principles and what we want to live, those kind of higher abstract thinking, that goes away, and it's more of just this instinctual fight, flight, freeze, let's take down or do things, right? And so if that happens, and it could take a serious amount of time, like 30-40 minutes of intentionally trying to calm ourselves before engaging in something different, and before actually being able to think 100% clearly according to our values. And so recognizing, so once we get to that place, we need to either take a break if there's not something we can do right now, or finding a way to utilize that energy, that either the adrenaline rush or whatever other chemicals, hormones kind of pumping through us, to kind of use it for something functional. So going for a run to exercise and work through those muscles, or kind of finding some way to relax the system, to reset, cold water, or whatever it is, to kind of the slapping of the rubber band on the wrist to kind of spark, to kind of reignite that frontal lobe, or to kind of shock us out of that state. And so learning what the function is, and preparing for that, and having that be our mindset, can help us not get so flooded, to be able to kind of focus our energy into fixing a problem before it gets to the point where our lid is flipped and we are just seeing red and want to hurt somebody or hurt something, whether with our words or with our hands. So recognizing anger is just an emotion, It's a signal to us that something is wrong in our situation, in our environment, and that we want to take care of it. And then there's the physiological impact of that, which is our body prepares us for a fight, prepares us to run, prepares us to take on something. And that anger a lot of times can be very destructive if we don't learn how to utilize it for something constructive. So thinking of a plan around anger, and I mean, for all of us, I think when we get really angry or start to feel resentful or self-pitying, that can kind of be that same place. That if we don't utilize that for something constructive, if we don't have a plan and we haven't practiced utilizing that for something constructive, that when those moment comes, that instinct will kick in, the reflex will be whatever it has been. And so that could be, I'm going to go relapse because my wife doesn't care, or I'm going to go do this because I'd rather do this than hurt somebody or hurt something or do something I would regret, even though you're kind of doing something you regret. Anyway, but this idea is okay, having a plan, coming up with a plan. So if you start to feel and understand what kinds of things makes you really angry, and if this is like a trauma response from past experiences you've been through, if this is again injustices in life, politics, your spouse, your siblings, your parents, if this is something, whatever the trigger is for the anger emotion, understanding okay, what do I get angry about, what makes me so upset, and then planning ahead of time. If there's something you can do before, if it's something that you can change, if it's something you can address, learning to take those steps now, making those commitments and doing the work necessary to fix the problem before it is triggering to anger, right? Before there it gets to that place where you feel like you have to take force on and take that problem down. So that the other side is when you get angry, because sometimes there are going to be happen things are going to happen that are going to cause you anger before you even realize, oh, this is a trigger, right? And so being able to recognize when you are feeling angry, when you are doing that, and that this can be something helpful. Again, it's like telling people that when they see you start to get angry or a little frustrated or a little anxious, ask them to tell you, ask them to kind of let you know, be like, hey, I'm kind of seeing some red flags here. I'm kind of seeing you getting a little upset, and they can check in with you, be like, you doing okay? And that can be great. Again, that anger can be for others a signal that you need support, and for you to take on the commitment of I'm going to accept that support when it comes. If my wife says, hey, you doing okay? Sometimes we can get just defensive and shut down and be like, no, I'm good, I'm fine, like, leave me alone, right? Especially if it's our wives or spouses that are kind of triggering some of that anger. But again, our choice to be like, this anger has a function. There's a reason that I'm feeling this way. Again, whether it be an injustice or feeling attacked, feeling defensive, feeling self-pitying, and being able to shift that into something constructive relationally, right? So letting them know. So being able to connect with other people, or even just finding ways for you. If that's taking a deep breath, into that big deep belly breath to kind of try to relax. Um, there are some obvious, or there are some quick ways of kind of making yourself yawn, which is also it is my brain is now calming down. Yawning can be a trigger to relax to the nervous system, to calm down. It's time to rest, time to sleep, time to breathe. And it is contagious. So you might need just to have like a meme or something, a picture of somebody yawning, or a video you can go to where you see someone yawn that can trigger in your brain, I need to yawn to slow down, right? Or just a big sigh, a huff can trigger into the body. Hey, you need to breathe. Let's let it settle down, right? And so those can be some quick ways, or grounding yourself, kind of like a 5-finger exercise of noticing, what do you see? What do you feel? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you taste? And allowing yourself to check in and ground yourself, or doing some visualizations, doing some yoga, going to exercise. I remember for me one time I was interacting with this guy, and he was just grading on me every step I tried to take to do the work I was assigned to do. He was just getting in the way. So I remember spending a night just thinking through it, and every time I started to get really upset and angry, I would just do 10, 15, 20 push-ups to just work through some of that anger, and then go back to thinking about it. And then if I started to escalate, more push-ups, back and forth until I kind of felt I had worked through the big rush of it. And I was able to think more clearly, and I had a path. So finding ways to deal with that anger and face it and use it. Again, doing some push-ups for me was very constructive to build my muscles, but also to work through that energy in a constructive instead of destructive way. I would encourage you with this coming up with a plan and then practicing it. Practicing what you're going to do in those moments. If it's the huff, if it's a yawn, if it's push ups, if it's squats, if it's going for a run, finding ways, thinking about that, intentionally thinking about the things that are triggering, things that make you angry, and using those skills over and over until that becomes the reflex, until that becomes the instinct. Because once we do start to get triggered, we're not going to be able to think as clearly. And if these things haven't been practiced enough, when we get angry, we're just going to act out in that anger how we normally do. And so, today, right now, after this video, make a plan, write through those triggers, write through the things that make you angry, and try to start making those connections of why those things make you angry. What about that? What's the function of the anger in those situations? What is it that want you to do? What do you feel like you need to do? If there's something you can do preemptively to kind of fix and deal with those problems, do it. If not, then figuring out what can I do to cope with that anger in the moment, and how can I practice that and start practicing today.